Bob paced back and forth on the sandy shore, his eyes filled with worry. His wife, Sarah, had been missing for 3 long days. The local authorities had searched tirelessly, but there was no sign of her. Bob's heart ached with fear and uncertainty. He sat down on a rock, his head in his hands, and wondered if he would ever see Sarah again. He replayed the last few days in his head on repeat, and his eyes filled with tears as he stared at the ocean in front of him. Where was Sarah? She couldn't have just disappeared into thin air. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. There was one question that he tried not to think about too much, but he couldn't help but wonder, was she still alive? He felt helpless, as there was not much he could do. He had shared the story of her disappearance on social media, and the local news had also picked it up. But so far, nobody had seen or heard anything that could help them locate her. He was worried sick about her, and he wouldn't be able to rest until he found her. It was a strange situation because Sarah had disappeared while they were on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. There was nowhere she could have gone except into the sea. And yet, there was not a single trace of her. It was difficult not to give up hope in this bleak situation, but Bob was determined to find his wife. They had taken the cruise trip to celebrate their wedding anniversary, and they had had an absolutely wonderful time. It was one of their best vacations ever together. Even though this actually sounded great, it was only something that made Bob worry more. If they were having such a great time, she would never have just left without telling him. Right? His online posts about her disappearance had gone viral, and many strangers had started commenting on them. The comments varied from hopeful and kind messages to horrible accusations and theories, some even saying that she left him on purpose or that she had definitely already drowned by now. Bob did his best to ignore those last ones, but it was difficult. However, he received much support from his friends and family, and he was managing to keep it together. He needed to. For Sarah, he could sit and cry all day, sure, but that would not help him find her. He took a deep breath and jumped up from the rock, ready to search the area again. He wasn't sure he'd find anything, but it was better than doing nothing. While Bob continued his own search, the police were also making progress. They had started an investigation on the first day of Sarah's disappearance, and they hadn't had much luck yet. They were almost starting to doubt whether they should continue the search. But now, they were finally making a breakthrough. At first, the cruise's captain, William, had been very brusque and not very welcoming. He had also denied the police's request to see the security camera footage and claimed that it would be an invasion of his guests' privacy. So, the police had started by interviewing guests and asking them if they had seen or heard anything on the night of Sarah's disappearance. Sadly, nobody had been able to tell them anything helpful. The police also immediately started a search on the water with patrol boats and helicopters in cooperation with the Coast Guard. And when that did not help, they issued a press release to the public, asking boaters and coastal residents to be on the lookout for any signs of Sarah. It was difficult, but Bob never lost hope. On the third day, 2 very unexpected things happened, and they were huge breakthroughs in the case. The first thing happened when a dolphin suddenly approached a little boat that was out on the water looking for Sarah. The crew was amazed to see a dolphin from this close, and they forgot about Sarah for a second. But then they realized what was going on. The dolphin had come to them for a reason. When it opened its mouth and they saw what it was holding inside it, they gasped and their eyes widened in disbelief. The crew couldn't believe what they were seeing. They had so many questions. How was this possible? And was it good news or bad? They knew one thing for sure. They needed to show it to the police right away. When Bob saw what the dolphin had brought them, his eyes filled with tears. It was Sarah's wedding ring. After this, the atmosphere became somber. They thought there was no way this dolphin had found her ring unless she had fallen into the water. And they had been searching the weir for days now, without any news. However, as mentioned before, this wasn't the only breakthrough they had made. On the third day of Sarah's disappearance, the captain also finally agreed to show the police the security footage of his cruise. And this would tell them even more about what might have happened to Sarah, especially now that they had found their ring. The officers sat in the dark control room, staring at the huge screens in front of them, playing the footage that was recorded on the night when Sarah had disappeared. They fast-forwarded it because there was no movement at all, and they were almost convinced the footage wouldn't show them anything useful. Until it did. The officers gasped and looked at each other, confused. "Is that?" one of them began, and the other said, "I think so. We can't tell Bob about this yet." What they had seen on there definitely pushed their investigation into a new, unexpected direction, and they now had a suspect they wanted to interview: the captain's son, Mike. The investigation room was abuzz with energy. Officers scattered about, shuffling through Mike's records. "Did you see this?" Officer Jenkins asked, holding up a sheet detailing Mike's past escapades on the ship. Multiple liaisons with guests. His partner, Officer Lee, nodded, deep in thought. The captain's son was no stranger to the ship's many secrets. As they delved deeper, Mike's reputation as a notorious playboy became increasingly evident. The cruise ship's crew lounge was alive with chatter. "Mike's always been a charmer, especially with the ladies," whispered one waitress to another. Another chimed in. "Did you see him with that one guest? Sarah, was it? They seemed awfully close." These snippets of conversations painted a picture of Mike's behavior on board. Everywhere the officers went, someone had a tale to tell about Mike's latest conquest. Multiple guests were brought in for questioning. One elderly woman adjusted her glasses, recounting, "I've seen them late in the evening, engrossed in deep conversation on the deck." A younger man added, "I saw them dancing close, lost in each other's eyes." The testimonies varied, but one thing was consistent. Mike and Sarah were frequently seen together, sharing moments that raised eyebrows. Stella, a veteran crew member, sighed as she was questioned. "Mike's always had a way with guests," she said. "He's charming and they fall for it. But with Sarah, it seemed different." As more crew members were interviewed, a clear pattern emerged. Mike had a history of fleeting romances with guests. But was Sarah just another fling? Or was there something deeper? The officers needed to understand his motivations. A folder lay open on the table, filled with evidence. Photos, notes, and witness accounts pieced together a story. One photo in particular showed Mike and Sarah sharing a quiet moment, her hand resting on his. "This isn't casual," Officer Lee muttered. "There's a deeper connection here." It was clear to both officers that this wasn't just a simple shipboard fling between Mike and Sarah. Mike sat across from Officer Jenkins, a hint of unease in his eyes. "So, Mike," began Jenkins, trying to keep the tone light, "how well did you know Sarah?" Mike hesitated, playing with the rim of his glass. "We chatted, like I do with many guests." The officer noticed Mike's slight defensiveness, prompting him to tread lightly. The objective was to gather information, not scare him off. Officer Lee spread out an array of photographs on the table, shots from onboard parties, group photos, and candid moments. But among them, several showed Mike and Sarah, laughing at a shared joke, dancing, and even a stolen glance across the dining room. Their chemistry was undeniable. "These photos tell a story, Mike," Officer Lee mused, waiting for Mike's reaction. Mike swallowed hard, then spoke. "Sarah and we connected. We shared stories, dreams. It wasn't just a casual thing." The officers exchanged glances. This was more than they had anticipated. "She was special," Mike added, a hint of emotion in his voice. The officers needed to unravel the depth of this relationship to understand its significance in Sarah's mysterious disappearance. The interrogation room was tense. Officer Jenkins leaned in. "So just friends, you say?" Mike hesitated. "It was complicated." The officers exchanged glances, realizing the challenge they faced. Could they separate genuine feelings from mere infatuation? "There's clearly more to this, Mike," Officer Lee pressed. The implications of their bond could drastically change the course of their investigation. Another batch of photos was brought in, each one revealing a deeper layer of intimacy between Mike and Sarah. From stolen glances to whispered secrets, their bond was palpable. The officers pored over each image, trying to decode the nature of their relationship. One thing was clear. The connection between Mike and Sarah wasn't just a fleeting cruise romance, it had depth, making the mystery even more intricate. As Bob entered the room he shared with Sarah, a sense of emptiness overwhelmed him. Picking up a book she was reading, a folded paper slipped out. Curiously, he opened it, revealing Sarah's handwriting. The note was cryptic, hinting at something she was wrestling with internally. Bob felt a pang in his heart, realizing she had been keeping secrets. Holding the note tightly, Bob sat on the edge of the bed, rereading it. Phrases like, "I must do this" and "no other way" jumped out at him. Was she referencing her disappearance? Was there something she was planning? Bob's mind raced, trying to piece together any past conversations or hints that might give the note context. Thoughts tumbled in Bob's mind like a relentless storm. Could someone have been influencing Sarah? Or was she willingly diving into a situation he was unaware of? He thought of Mike and wondered if he had a role in this. The uncertainty of it all weighed on him, but he knew he had to uncover the truth for Sarah's sake. Bob shared the note with the officers, who were equally intrigued. Each had a theory: blackmail, a hidden relationship, a personal struggle. The room was buzzing with speculation, but nothing concrete. Could be a coded message, one murmured, or a diary entry, another suggested. The note had undoubtedly become the pivot around which the investigation would now revolve. Night had fallen, but sleep eluded Bob. The note was an incomplete puzzle, its implications echoing in his mind. Sarah had been hiding something, and he felt a desperate need to understand. Determination welled up within him. He would dig deeper, find every hidden clue, and piece together the mystery of her disappearance. The next day, a crew member handed the officers a memory card. "Found this in the CCTV archives," he whispered. The footage was grainy, but showed Mike and Sarah in a dimly lit corridor, their faces close. The atmosphere was intimate, the tension palpable. As Bob watched, his heart sank deeper, the visuals adding another layer to the unfolding enigma. Just as things seemed to escalate between Mike and Sarah, the footage froze and then abruptly ended. The sudden cut-off left everyone stunned. "What happened next?" Bob exclaimed, desperation evident in his voice. The officers were equally frustrated. The tape seemed to be tampered with or corrupted, leaving them with even more unanswered questions. The bond of trust Bob once felt for Sarah now seemed fragile. The combination of the note and the footage gnawed at him. Could he really know his Sarah? Could she be entangled in something with Mike? The weight of potential betrayal pressed on his heart, filling it with confusion and disbelief. Bob's world felt like it was turning upside down. Every memory, every shared moment now seemed to be under a cloud of doubt. Had there been signs? Moments he had overlooked? With every hour, the layers of Sarah's secrets seemed to unfold. The pain of not knowing and the shock of the uncovered truths were taking a toll on him. Locked in his room, Bob stared at a photo of him and Sarah. The smiles, the love, all now overshadowed by the unfolding events. The hurt was profound and betrayal stung like a fresh wound. What truths was she hiding? The need to confront and understand was paramount. Amidst the whirlwind of emotions, Bob's resolve to find answers grew stronger. The police were interrupted by an anonymous call, the voice hushed and hurried. "You're looking in the wrong place," the voice whispered. "Mike had plans, not just on the ship." The line went dead, leaving the officers puzzled. This new piece of information, though cryptic, pointed to deeper layers in Mike's activities and perhaps his involvement with Sarah. As the officers dug deeper, they discovered transactions and bookings under Mike's name. There were reservations for a private island retreat and purchases of supplies. The connections became impossible to ignore, making Mike's intentions appear even more dubious. Was he planning to whisk Sarah away secretly, or was there something even more sinister at play? The noose around Mike seemed to tighten with every uncovered detail. Meetings were held behind closed doors as officers charted out their next move. They needed to be strategic. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Plans were made to intercept Mike, question him, and unveil the extent of his connection to Sarah's vanishing. But just as the police were about to make their move, another shocking revelation hit them. Mike, who was under covert surveillance, had disappeared. His sudden absence was chilling, adding another layer of complexity to the investigation. Now, the search was not only for Sarah, but also for the key suspect, the captain's elusive son. The ship was abuzz with the news of Mike's disappearance. Every corner was searched, every crew member questioned. Time was of the essence, and with every passing hour, the trail grew colder. The urgency to find both Sarah and Mike intensified. The fear of losing them both forever loomed large, adding to the pressure on the officers. Through painstaking efforts, the police unearthed a grainy CCTV footage. The timestamp was crucial, the night of Sarah's disappearance. The video depicted the distant figures of Sarah and Mike, boarding a jet ski, vanishing into the vast expanse of the sea. This was the last concrete evidence of Sarah, confirming her connection with Mike beyond doubt. Armed with this new evidence, the investigation took a sharp turn. The focus now was to trace the journey of the jet ski. Interrogations with locals and fishing boats led to hints of its potential routes. Maps were laid out, marking every nearby island, cove, and potential hideout. The race was on to trace their path and, hopefully, find Sarah. Bob couldn't sit still. The weight of waiting was crushing. Deciding to be proactive, he hired a private speedboat, determined to follow any leads himself. The police, understanding his desperation, cooperated, sharing information on potential landing points. Bob, driven by love and fear, pushed forward, hoping to play a part in Sarah's rescue. The search expanded to the surrounding islands. Each one held potential clues or hideaways. Bob, accompanied by a team of officers, hopped from one island to another. Beaches, coves, and inland areas were scoured. Locals were interviewed and every shack or dwelling was inspected. The vastness of the area made the search daunting, but they pressed on. One island stood out. A secluded shack hidden amongst dense trees showed signs of recent habitation. There were fresh footprints, remnants of food, and discarded clothes. Although no immediate trace of Sarah was found, it became evident that the island had recent visitors. The search intensified, hoping to uncover more clues about Sarah's whereabouts. The dim interior of the shack was a maze of discarded items and personal belongings. A spilled bag, half-opened food packets, and a diary with scribbled notes. The police carefully sifted through, hoping for a hint, a clue, anything that would give them an edge in this evolving mystery. Among the clutter, Bob's eyes caught a familiar sight. A scarf, its design unmistakable. It was the one he had gifted Sarah on their last anniversary. Holding it, memories flooded back. His heart ached, but now he was certain. Sarah had been here. This tiny piece of fabric was proof of her presence. As evening descended, Bob decided to explore the local area. He wandered into a rustic tavern, seeking solace in its dim confines. As he sipped his drink, a familiar face caught his eye. It was Mike. Their eyes locked, tension palpable. This was an encounter neither had expected, yet fate had thrown them together. Before Bob could fully react, Mike, sensing the impending confrontation, made a hurried exit. In his haste, he left behind a hand-drawn map detailing an area of the island. Bob grabbed it, realizing this might be the very clue they needed. Despite the anger burning within, Bob knew the priority was Sarah, and this map might lead him to her. The hand-drawn lines on the map became the beacon of hope. Bob immediately shared it with the police. The newfound clue re-energized the search team. With renewed vigor, they focused on the marked area. Hopes were high, but the island's treacherous terrain was challenging, making the search both physically and emotionally taxing. Deep in a forested area in the heart of the island, they found her. Sarah was inside a makeshift shelter, alive but clearly shaken. Bob's relief was overwhelming, a storm of emotions as he held her close. Their reunion was bittersweet. Answers were needed, but for now, the relief of her safety was paramount. Once settled, Sarah began to recount her tale. She spoke of Mike, the magnetic attraction, and their clandestine meetings. The ship was their sanctuary, where stolen moments became days and then weeks. Their connection grew, pulling her into a whirlwind of emotions she hadn't anticipated. Her voice quivered as she described their plan. A new life, away from prying eyes, where they could be together without judgment. Their decision was swift. The island was chosen for its isolation. Here, they believed, they could find the happiness that eluded them elsewhere. "And the ring?" Bob asked hesitantly. Sarah looked away, tears in her eyes. The night they fled, in a symbolic gesture of leaving her past behind, she had thrown her wedding ring into the sea's depths. It was a painful choice, meant to sever ties, but fate had other plans, leading the ring back through the Dolphin. Bob listened, his emotions a turbulent sea of hurt, betrayal, and love. Every revelation pierced deeper. He loved Sarah, but her choices had changed everything. Their future was uncertain. The investigation had reached its climax, but for Bob, a personal journey of healing and acceptance had just begun. The air was thick with tension as Bob replayed Sarah's revelations in his mind. Every word she said was like a dagger to his heart. As the weight of the truth settled, he felt a myriad of emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, but also an undeniable truth. Sarah had found happiness with another. Bob retreated to a quiet corner, letting his mind wander to happier times. Their first date, the surprise trips, lazy mornings, and shared dreams. The love was genuine, strong, and unyielding. Could it have faded so quickly? Or had life's challenges slowly chipped away at their bond? Deep in thought, Bob realized that true love meant wanting happiness for the other, even if it meant letting go. As much as he yearned for the past, he couldn't chain Sarah to memories. If her happiness lay elsewhere, he would have to find the strength to set her free. Sarah, meanwhile, was battling her own demons. The allure of a new romance had been intoxicating, but with distance came clarity. The thrill with Mike was an escape, a fleeting fantasy. The depth, understanding, and bond she shared with Bob couldn't be replicated. The realization was sudden and overwhelming. As the sun set, both Bob and Sarah sat by the shore, lost in their thoughts. Life had thrown them a curveball. What they had envisioned for their future had changed drastically. The path ahead was uncertain, but they both knew it was time to make some hard decisions. Under the canopy of stars, they finally talked. Words flowed, some accusatory, some apologetic, but mostly just two souls trying to understand each other. They revisited memories, dissected misunderstandings, and slowly the barriers began to crumble. Morning brought with it a renewed sense of purpose. Bob and Sarah decided it was time to move forward. They cherished their love, but also acknowledged the changes. Their journey ahead might be as partners, friends, or two souls on different paths, but it was a journey they had to embark on. Sarah decided to take a solo trip, rediscovering herself. Bob, on the other hand, dove into projects he'd been pushing aside. They were seeking closure, healing, and a new sense of self. It was a time of rediscovery and self-awareness for them both. The cruise ship sounded its horn, signaling the end of the voyage. As it docked, passengers disembarked, taking with them memories, experiences, and lessons. For Bob and Sarah, the cruise had been a journey of self-discovery, growth, and understanding. As the ship sailed away, the story of Bob and Sarah remained etched in its corridors. A testament to love's unpredictable nature, its highs and lows, and the profound impact of personal growth and understanding. The waves of the sea, much like love, were unpredictable, but they always found their way to the shore.